Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be playing around with some Isomalt Sugar to make some sugar decorations and give this decadent salted chocolate cake bar a very unique and fitting reveal for a dish I'm calling Cake in a Box. Alright, so let's get started. First up, I'm going to make the yellow cake for the cake bars by whisking together the sugar, salt, and room temperature butter until it's pale and creamy. After that, I'm going to add in the eggs one at a time until both are thoroughly mixed into the creamed sugar. Then I'm going to add in the vanilla paste and baking powder. After that, I'm going to slowly whisk in the vegetable oil into the batter until it's extremely smooth. Then mix in the milk, sour cream, and finally the cake flour until you have a very smooth batter. Just be sure not to overmix the batter because as soon as the lumps are gone, that means you should be done mixing. When the batter is finished, I'm going to pour it into a baking tray that's lightly greased with butter around the edges and lined with parchment paper. Then I'm going to bake this big, beautiful cake in a 375-degree Fahrenheit oven for 25 minutes. Obviously, the time will vary depending on the thickness of your batter, so be sure always to use the toothpick trick to gauge the doneness of your cake. Alright, so while the cake is baking away in the oven, I'm going to make a very simple chocolate glaze. So in a small ramekin, I'm going to add some dry powdered gelatin along with a few tablespoons of water and give that a good stir until it thickens up. After that, I'm going to add some corn syrup to a small pan along with the thickened gelatin and some vanilla bean paste and heat that up until everything dissolves and is mixed together. Next, I'm going to add that to some melted dark chocolate, give that a good whisk until that is completely smooth, and if you really want to be picky with it, you can pass it through a fine sieve, but you just want to keep this on a hot pot of water so it stays melted and pourable, but if not, you can just cover it and put it in the fridge until a later time. Now that the cake is done, I'm going to pull it out of the oven and I'm going to let it cool down for a few minutes before I remove it from the baking tray. But be sure before you remove the cake from the pan that you have a plan in place as to where you are going to put it. Otherwise, you'll find yourself with a handful of cake and nowhere to go. Not that that's really the worst thing in the world, but it will make life a little bit easier if you think about it beforehand. I would definitely advise you to refrigerate or even freeze the cake before cutting just because it stiffens the crumb of the cake a bit and is easier to cut. But I'm just going to cut this one up into small bars or rectangles right away fresh out of the oven. Just be sure to use a very sharp knife if you're going to take this shortcut. After the bars or whatever kind of shape you prefer are cut out, transfer them to a cake rack situated in the middle of a baking tray. Then take the chocolate glaze off of the heat and spoon, ladle, or pour the glaze over the cake until they are completely coated on all sides. Now during this process or before it, you might want to adjust the consistency of the chocolate glaze with just a little bit of hot water because the glaze will have a tendency to thicken up over time and it will prevent you from pouring an even layer, so just be on the lookout for that. While the cake bars are setting up in the fridge, I'm going to play around with some Isomalt Sugar, which I'll have more info in my D box for those of you who want to know more about it, but its basic use in any pastry kitchen is for sugar decorations and sugar decorations alone because it yields a very strong and clear sugar glass and has a low melting point, which makes it easy to work with. But here I'm going out on a limb and we'll try to make a sugar box to encapsulate the final dessert. First, I'm going to put the Isomalt Sugar in between two silpats on a baking tray and we'll bake it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes until it's completely melted. After that, I'm going to take it out of the oven and carefully push down the melted sugar with a folded cloth in order to remove some of the larger air pockets. In order to make the sugar box, it takes a series of melting, measuring, and cutting with hot torched utensils in contrast to the size of the cake bar in order to make the sugar box fit accordingly. But the great thing about Isomalt is that you can have a lot of fun with it, so don't get too trapped with this whole sugar box idea. There's a big, beautiful world of sugar decorations out there, and it's definitely worth going and checking it out. But for the look of this box, it's pretty simple. I'm going to cut out a few large pieces of the sugar glass, melt each down according to the length and width of the cake bar, then slowly and patiently melt each side together with a straight edge spatula and a torch or some sort of open stove flame. Just be careful not to drip the sugar on yourself, because trust me, you will not make that mistake again. Alright, finally now, once the box is assembled, take the bars out of the fridge and using a warm spatula, remove a glazed bar from the tray, place it onto a big beautiful white plate, top it with a few toasted cake crumbles and a little pinch of sea salt, and then of course the glorious sugar covering. And that's it. It almost kind of reminds me of a really interesting version of a break in case of emergency for like those late night cravings. So it's definitely a fun one to play around with. This is pretty incredible. I mean, really, this is obviously going to be a dessert that you're not going to make once a week or maybe ever in your lifetime. So that's not why I made this dessert. The inspiration behind this was another Instagrammer, which I'll have right here. I'll link her Instagram profile right here. And she's a pastry chef in Ukraine, and she's just really fantastic and has a lot of inspirational pictures and just a really inspirational style. So that's where I got the inspiration behind this sugar cube or the sugar box. And I really just wanted to share with you guys kind of the world of possibilities that food has to offer, and this is just a really good example of that. So I know that it looks complex. It's really actually not that hard. The first attempt was kind of crazy. I actually failed miserably a few times just figuring out how to cut the sugar and kind of melt it just to the right, consistency and the thickness right, and kind of get all that working together for the success of this sugar box. But once I got it down, I had to recreate this. Obviously, you guys can see I got my hair cut. Things are kind of changed a little bit, and it's a few days later, and I had to completely recreate this box just to do this outro and taste it. One of the great things about this dessert is obviously the cake bar. I've made these before on my channel, and it's just a really neat dessert. I love making these. There's so many different ways you can go about it. Obviously, you can add caramel, you can coat it with different layers. You could even do like a really shiny mirror glaze on them and add different, jellies and layers and fillings and that. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the cake bar. So that's really the simplistic part of this recipe and what I'm really focusing on. But I really just love being inspired by other chefs, other cooks, other photographers, and different people who just have a really big heart for food and food photography and all that good stuff. So all right, I'm gonna quit yapping. I'm gonna dig into this. Obviously, the reason I give this big disclaimer is because it's really an impractical dessert. Like I said, you're probably never gonna make this. It's really eye candy, but for the pastry chefs out there who can knock these things out and make them for big parties, obviously there's a art in that, and I just had to give my go at it and see how it turned out. So I really think it was cool. Obviously this side got kind of melted, the other side's pretty cool. And again, this is my second go around, and this only took me maybe 10 minutes-ish to put together, 10-15 minutes. So the first time it was a long time. All right, I'm gonna crack into it and see how it goes. Oh, this one's much stronger. So you just kind of peel that away, and it's kind of nice because when you could do something like this, it's just, I feel like it's so worth it, especially just to impress people and kind of get that look on their face of something that they've never seen before. It's just so awesome. So all right, I'm gonna taste the cake bar. It's not that sharp because it just sort of melts in your mouth, so it's just crunchy. Oh, the salt on top is so good. Nothing like salted dark chocolate and yellow cake. I mean, that's like probably one of my favorite combos, or pastry combos. If you let these sit out, they just get super tender and delicious. And you can freeze these and keep them maybe for a week or two if you cover them really tight with plastic. But really, it's just a fantastic recipe. You can wow a lot of people with this, even if you don't make the sugar craziness. Just making the cake bars and playing around with those is a task in and of itself. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this recipe. I know that I did. It was very fun to put together and kind of challenge myself. And I'd love to think that you guys learned something from the idea of playing with sugar and the world of possibilities that garnish plays a huge role in with cooking and making things look beautiful, and kind of reveals and what pastry chefs sort of think about when they make dishes. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure you thumbs it up, comment down below for future video requests, and of course, subscribe to my channel. And I will see you guys next time with another recipe. Later, guys.